Good morning, friends, and welcome to New Garden Friends Meeting. It is our practice at New Garden Friends Meeting to extend a wide and warm welcome. You are welcome here among friends, no matter who you are and no matter where you may be on your faith journey. You are welcome here at New Garden Friends Meeting. If you are worshiping with us on Zoom, hello and welcome. If you are worshiping through Facebook Live, hello and welcome. Or if you are watching the recording of this worship, welcome. I am so glad that you have joined us this morning for worship. Friends, I have a reading to share with you all this morning to begin our worship time together. The reading I have for us this morning is from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 through 8. I think it will be a familiar passage to many of you. I'm reading from the New Revised Standard Version. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and have all knowledge and have all faith so as even to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all of my possessions, if I hand over my body so I might boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices only in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Is there anything more worthy of celebration than love? Love is at the very heart of our community life here at New Garden Friends Meeting because it is essential to our shared theology. We believe in love. We believe that God is love, and we affirm that God's love is universal and without boundaries. God's complete and eternal love for all people is an affirmation that is essential to who we are here at New Garden Friends Meeting. And it is fundamental to who I am as a person of faith. Almost 6 years ago in the spring, when I first came to New Garden Friends Meeting, this is what I considered first. It was the most important sign for me that this was a community that would be a good match for me. I was looking for a community of faith that took love seriously, that acted out of a place of love in our social justice and witness work in the world, that believed that God is love and could affirm that. I was looking for a community that affirmed loudly and joyfully that God loves children and elders, that God loves queer and lesbian and gay and transgender people, that God loves single people and partnered people, that God loves alcoholics and addicts and others who are struggling, that God loves people with disabilities, with mental health issues, that God loves people who are traumatized, people who are living with the constant struggle of poverty. I was looking for a community that wasn't afraid to affirm that God loves extravagantly, without boundaries, without parameters, that God's love is tenacious and tireless. And here at New Garden Friends Meeting, we do that all the time. We say it publicly and we show it in our actions. We affirm that love is winning, and we look for signs in our world of how love has won. We affirm that love is radical, countercultural, challenging, rule breaking. That love calls us to do hard things, things that are messy, things that are uncertain. We affirm that love calls us to maintain difficult boundaries, to stretch and grow as individuals and as a community. We affirm that love isn't easy, but it is powerful. I was talking with someone earlier this week about this prepared message, and the person asked if I was bringing a message on God's love, divine love, or if I was bringing a message about human love and loving human relationships. And I said, yes, all of that. Because we are reminded in 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 and 12, beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God lives in us, and God's love is perfected in us. And the passage from 1 Corinthians that I shared with all of you a few minutes ago reminds us that our actions are hollow and meaningless if they are not grounded in love, that love will abide and overcome all things, even death. For me, this connection between God's love and the love we feel for other humans, that connection makes sense to me. That love that I have for my loved ones, it rests within me in the same place, in that place of my inner light, where I am connected to the divine. This place is where tenderness and mercy come from. The place that helps me respond with compassion when my neighbors act in ways that are at odds with my commitment to justice and peace. I like to think of it this way. We practice love in our lives. In small steps, we learn how to be more loving. We learn how to love more respectfully and in ways that honor our own wholeness and integrity. We practice that first within relationships with those who are dearest to us, within relationships that are healthy and thriving, where we receive love in return. And then we can apply those skills to our relationships with friends and acquaintances, to relationships with neighbors, and eventually to those who we deeply dislike or disagree with. The Gospel of Matthew reminds us, you have heard it said, love your neighbor, but hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Loving your enemy is an extremely tall order, and it will look like different things for different people and under different circumstances. It will look different for you in different parts of your life. But it is always what we are called to strive for. No matter how far we might fall short from that goal, it is always what we are working towards as people of faith. And I think that loving your enemies, that it is aided if we can first truly love ourselves and truly love those who are dearest to us. I also think that loving your enemies is something that is only made possible by the ways that communities come together to support individuals, that loving your enemies requires communities to take seriously issues of injustice. Loving your enemies, I think, is about holding them accountable for their action and laboring with them with compassion to challenge their behavior and to change it. Like all forms of love, it takes work. And it requires that you also know and respect yourself and your own integrity. As I was preparing this message for all of you, I started thinking about all of the examples of love that I have seen in my life recently. And there are so many, but I wanted to share a few of them with you all this morning. When I think of love in action, I think of my friends who are foster parents. When I think of love in action, I think of the Black activists who I know who are calling our communities to accountability around issues of injustice. When I think of love in action, I think of the people I know who work every Mother's Day to bail out nonviolent offenders so they can go home and be mothers to their children on Mother's Day. When I think of love in action, I think of the neighbors who bring food to their sick friend. When I think of love in action, I think of the parents advocating for the well-being of their transgender child. When I think of love in action, I think of New Garden Friends meeting and how we have made such an effort to use a person's correct pronouns. When I think of love in action, I think of reparations for Black Americans, no matter how far off that goal might be. When I think of love in action, I think of mothers who get up all night long to feed their babies. When I think of love in action, I think of the friends who faithfully show up at the hospital with balloons and food and cards and confetti to encourage and support their friend who just had surgery. I think of 50th wedding anniversary celebrations. I think of birthday cupcakes that are in the child's exact favorite shade of blue. I think of kissing stuffed animals goodnight, along with a toddler. And I think of couples who are in their 60s cooking dinner together, so filled with that quiet tenderness that comes from having a relationship that has grown and changed over decades. I think of gay pride parades, celebrating love in all of its incredible and beautiful variety. I think of adult children planning a memorial service to honor their mother who has passed away and making sure her very favorite flowers will be at the front of the church. I think of community garden plots where people grow food to share with their neighbors. I think of rec centers that provide free after-school care to all children. I think about community parks that are always filled with so many people enjoying fresh air and how glorious it is to be alive in the sunshine. I think of hard and painful conversations about white privilege and racism, and people being brave enough to have those conversations. And all of this is what I am celebrating this first day. After a year almost of pandemic, where we have been so frightened and so lonely and so isolated. After all of this, it feels even more important than ever to celebrate all of that incredible, unbelievable, world-changing love, and how it keeps growing and keeps transforming our communities and each of us. Love is like that. It changes us, and it changes us again. I invite you to join me today, friends. I invite you to join me in celebrating love. Celebrate the love that you share with your friends, the love that you share with your neighbors. Celebrate your beloveds, those in your life who love you best and who you love the most. Celebrate the most fundamental truth of our faith, that God loves you just the way you are. Celebrate today, and as you celebrate, know that love will call you to do hard things. Know that love will equip you to do those hard things, to do things that seem impossible. Today, friends, as you celebrate love, remember, love is winning all around us, every day. If there are examples in your life of love in action that you would like to share with me, I would love to hear them from you, either during our time of silent waiting worship, if it's appropriate, or you can always send me an email. There is nothing more important than celebrating love.